In Sevilla, they are very famous of being very funny people. So then they were saying that I was a civilian from Denmark. I was not fun at all. My name is Jesús Azogue. I'm Spanish. I was born in 1975, so I'm 46 right now. I came to Brussels in 2002. At the beginning, I was coming with that paradigm or this idea of the artist as the higher level than the rest of the world, something like that. This kind of elite status of the artist. That is not the case anymore. The Web 2.0 and all the digital revolution is bringing that capacity to everybody to be able to create and to recreate visual content. So that, for me, I think is really positive and interesting. And I completely embrace it, and I feel very comfortable on that space. If you think about our day-to-day, there is maybe no moment during our day where we are not confronted to visuals. Just open just Instagram or TikTok and all that. It's crazy. Imagine the amount of images that are there per day compared to the production of audiovisual content happening at the end of 19th centuries. If we think that actually 1 or 2 centuries ago that was not the case, it shows the bigger revolution of the visual reproduction that we're living nowadays. That's creating an environment where actually there is a huge demand of visuals creation, a huge demand of creativity. Nowadays there is a huge amount of creators, much more than what was there like 20, 50 years ago. Definitely I feel like the image of the artist due to that is starting to change. And if you add to that the fact that at the same time the audience is starting to have the capacity not only to consume the visuals, but at the same time to take them, to recreate them, to adjust them, then it's crazy. But that craziness at the same time is a great environment where I like to live in. But isn't that amazing? The fact that there are so much offer, it can answer to all demands. Who's defining the good or bad? In history, I think there has been like 2 big moments of the definition of what is the good, the beauty. A paradigm based on God, in the sense that there was the God entity was the one defining what was good or bad. Okay, in that moment it was easy. You were kind of told by a part of the society, they could define what was good or bad, and then based on a series of parameters, you could judge it very well. There is the implosion of the humanism. And in the humanism starts saying, like, it's the interior, the individual, the one who defines what is good or bad. And that's the moment where the art becomes a space where the judgment is based on each one of us. So the beauty is in the eyes of the one who's looking at it. There is a series of circumstances, at least on my life, I don't know if it's the case for all the creative, that in some way place you in one area. I was the child drawing in the street with a chalk. I lived in a block of apartments, and then there was concrete in front. I was the child who was making drawings there, I don't know, horses, people, whatever, in a very natural. I still at that time I had the impression, okay, I will do something beautiful so that my neighbors can see it. There was that moment as a child where I was kind of pointed like this, he's a good artist. And then 10, 12 years, if anybody would ask me, what are you going to be when you are old? I would say that. I was always on that area. I'm going to be a painter. I will be an artist. It was already incepted in my mind as a child. I was even afraid at a certain moment because it became even like a kind of a weight that I had on my back that, no, I cannot choose anything else. This is the way, this is your path. There is no other thing you can do. Even there was a moment, I was writing some poems and stories and all that. Still in my mind was like, no, you are on this area, but this is not your place. That's why afterwards I came back to fine art. If at that time it could have been with a ball and playing football or whatever. Suddenly I could be, or with a racket and playing tennis, it could have been another story. So for me, it was interesting to ask that, like, what is the position today of the artist, and what is the reality around all that? I was raised in Alcalá de Guadaira, a space where actually there's been a huge tradition of painting of landscapes. There was artists like Sanchez Perriez, influenced by the Barbizon school of landscaping from the 19th century, that were kind of in love of the landscapes that are around the Guadaira River, where there are a series of mills. Those spaces were taken as a model for a series of paintings that with the time have become a kind of a canon. And for me, that was the model to follow. It's true that when you are a teenager, then what you start doing is kind of challenging those canons. I think nowadays you go to a house in Alcalá and every time there is a painting, one of them is with a mill. Okay, at that time I was already fed up of that. I wanted to open new ways, and it was the time where I was also experimenting with the new media and all that, and I was collaborating with the gallery Icaria. And I had at that time with the blind man group the joke where I was proposing that one day I would paint one of the mills in pink, in very like a chewing gum pink. So like this I would give at least another reference for the landscapers to do something a bit different. So actually at that time I talked to Paco Mantecón. I learned to draw with him. So he was the cultural representative. The situation of the mills at that time were very deteriorated. I entered in some of them, there was some sand and all that from the river. And obviously when I was telling about we could paint it in pink, he was like looking at me like, oh, I mean, that will never happen. I think I talked also to patrimonial institution also, and the representative at that time say no, forget about that, that's never going to happen. For me that was kind of a symbol of how it was difficult to move a bit the establishment a bit farther. It's true that obviously this young guy, what is he coming here and proposing these kind of things? I see now very pretentious at that time. Obviously, in that moment I was like, wow, nobody understands me, I leave and I go. And that's one of the reasons I left.
Please pay attention carefully and follow the instructions to avoid damages caused by improper operation.
All my education periods in Spain and all that was kind of under a kind of umbrella concept of the artist and the art, yeah? So then I said, okay, I need to go out. And there were some teachers and people in the school that were telling me, please get out. And when I arrived to Brussels, obviously, my family couldn't help me so much. They struggled to help me at the very beginning. Then I had to start working. And I finished working on Mini Europe, which is a park here in Brussels. And I entered there as a photographer, where actually my photography was not so good. And I knew a bit of the use of cameras and all. And then there was a mascot dressed as a turtle. And that one was then receiving the people, and then I had to take the pictures and all that. But there were moments that the turtle had to go for lunch or whatever, so then there were photographers, we were two photographers, so then somebody needed to get dressed as the turtle. So many times I became the turtle there. And it was funny because then in that moment I was called l'artiste comédien. And I was like, I've been since a child saying I want to become an artist, and I've been studying and all that, and this is the artist I became. I saw myself then dressed as a turtle there with sweating and smelling a sweat, not always my own sweat. That image of the action and making the fun for an audience stayed in my mind. And every time I was preparing a show, I had that feeling. But it's like you dress up then to prepare the show. The work for institutions, artistic places and all that has much more of the push, the image, a kind of dress that you have to put in order to create something like a kind of image that you need to portray to the rest of the audience. So it's not only the work that you do, but it's also the way you portray yourself. On the agency, on the communication agency, that kind of acting was a bit different. I didn't need to have so much of that acting. In the agency, all my work, my creative work, was much more honest and direct. So then I was incorporating all of that honest and direct on the other kind of work. So every time I was doing something for New Blanche or for public spaces and all that, I started to use more the technique that I've been using on the agency. I just do a work where actually I have a team that I organize with a purpose, with an idea, with a concept, with a project. But at the end of the day, it's just people sharing emotions with techniques and using empathy. For me, in the moment of creating or doing something, I enter on that flow. And that makes you feel on a very calm, relaxed, and mindful moment. There were summers that I was spending on the house of my uncle and aunt during the whole night painting, while everybody was sleeping, with some music and painting. And those moments are unique. It's you, yourself, completely concentrated on doing something, and it's difficult to express what you feel on those moments. But it can happen also in front of a computer, even on the office, in the moment that you're creating the script of the next audiovisual content for a landing page. At least I think there are two pieces that were successful on bringing the message to the audience. The first one is E3, and it was actually the creation or projection of a tree made of words over the facade of buildings, where people could then interact in the place, like writing sentences, messages, whatever the message they wanted, and then making the tree grow. And if nobody was writing, then the letters were falling as the leaves fall during autumn. It was a collaborative work with different people. So there were designers creating the structure of the place where people were writing. There was the software people team to help to set up all the stuff. That one I liked, and at the same time was bringing this idea of a need of communication in a digital moment, some kind of a green message even at that time, but at the same time combining the digital sphere and all that. So that work I think was well taken. Another work was Pong. The original idea was to make a homage to the traditional game Pong, but instead of having that game in vertical, we wanted to create a 360 experience where we created a huge dome where there were people getting in, and there you had 4 controllers in the center, and then 4 people could then control 4 bars, and then instead of having just one ball bouncing, we were creating like hundreds of balls exploding there, and the balls were then the players needed to keep at least one of them bouncing there. If not, if they were falling, then they were gone. The point is that the balls at the same time were creating sound that then was generating music. When I saw the people there interacting, playing together, having this memory of the game Pong and all that, and at the same time enjoying the music, that was a whole feeling and experience that is exactly what I wanted to create. You see, so it's not anymore a piece of work that you just hang on a wall, but it's more that the action of the people in place for me was an experiment that I wanted to see working, and I feel that moment it worked successfully. Yeah. learn and to see is key. There is one piece that I created when I arrived to Brussels. It's called the White Room, where it's a series of indications of the spectator to get into a room, close doors, close windows, and then listen to anything. That was the feeling I had when I was living in Sevilla at that time. I felt myself like completely closed. The end of the piece is where doors and windows open and you get out and breathe. That feeling, I really was feeling it at the time when I came here. I had the impression I had broken, it can be physical, it can be also emotional, I was breaking barriers that were kind of closing myself to an environment that was kind of suffocating me at that time. I don't know if today that's the case for other creatives and all that in that environment. Things have changed a lot in 20 years, but for me personally at that time, that was the case. If I hadn't lived this digital revolution, my reality would have been completely different.